Mary Beth and Nina Lesowitz are the co-authors of The Grateful Life, The Secret to Happiness, and The Science of Contentment, tapping into the power of gratitude, helping people change their lives and improve their emotional and physical well-being. Mary Beth, when you started out on this book, you asked for guidance from the universe, and the answer you got was a string of personal challenges. Talk about that time and the family and work losses that you suffered back then.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We were, working on, we had written our first book about living life as a thank you, about, people being grateful for the gifts they were given. And then after that book came out, it seemed like the world dropped out for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people lost their jobs. There were a lot of crises, Sandy Hook, kind of terrible crisis in the world in general. And in my own life, I'm not laughing, but it's kind of ironic. We were preaching or talking about how people should be grateful in good times and bad. And I lost both my parents right before I was writing this, and lost my mother while I was writing it. I lost the position I was working with. It was a startup, and the investors backed out, so I lost my job at the same time. And those were two pretty big crises. And I'm a single mom trying to take care of 3 children and get them through college. So it really gave me a perspective of looking at the people that we were interviewing who really were going through some hardships, and having a new empathy for what they were going through. But yet, all in all, 100% of them found blessings in their lives instead of looking at what was going wrong. And the same thing happened with me. When you're stripped away from a lot of the things that you think are important. Obviously, you need a job to support yourself, but some of the things that you really don't need, you start looking deeper at what you really have, and you look at the people around you and relationships and the good health you have. So that's kind of where I came from in the process of writing this book.
In all of that time, did you ever, were you ever challenged in your belief and the process of attracting the good into your life?
Oh yeah, I mean it's hard, when you're waiting.
Did you feel like quitting, basically? Did you feel like saying,
yeah.
I
mean, there were, but one of the gifts that I've always felt, when you're as a writer, I've spent my whole career getting to hear people's stories, and so I think that in some ways the people that we were interviewing, or I was interviewing myself, became kind of angels in my life, because I think of one person in particular. She's a friend of mine. The same time her house flooded, she lost everything in her house. Her husband had just suffered a stroke and lost his means of employment. She had 2 sons in college. She was going through her own health crises. And yet, in observing her and being there the day after the flood, she walked around the whole time just saying, "I'm so grateful for all these friends that are here to help me." And out of that, just this abundance kept coming to her. People pulled up literally in cars at her driveway and said, "What do you need?" And things like we're in Chicago, so a heater and an air conditioner, and they would show up with them and then install them. So I got to witness some incredible stories of people having blessings come to them and being grateful during extreme adversity.
To stay with the universal law idea for a minute, in the book we learned that practicing daily gratitude can transform our reality. Is it accurate to say there's a law of attraction effect helping to bring desired results to us?
I think so. I mean, I think it's, one of the stories that's really moving for me in the book is Eileen. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and she decided that she was going to look at this that this illness or this disease in her life would bring her a way to heal all things, physical, emotional. And so she went through her journey starting with that attitude, and she would do things like bring a card to Starbucks or to a coffee shop and give it to the nurse that was going to be doing her MRI that day, and saying thank you in a little card ahead of time for taking such good care of me. And I think that her attitude and the way, the spirit that she went through her dis-ease was, she calls it dis-ease, so a dis-easing in her life. It's what cured her. And so she's perfectly healthy now. She lives a very vibrant, energized life. But I think it was because, in many ways, the way she chose to handle what was going on in her life.
Society gives us a lot of reasons to be angry and frustrated, comparison to our neighbors, state of the economy, world crisis, global warming. What is it about hardship that makes it such fertile ground for gratitude?
I think I work at a high school network that's in inner cities. There's 3 in the Chicago area in some pretty bad neighborhoods. And I look, just yesterday, there was a lockdown at the school because there was 5 teenagers showed up in the parking lot with guns threatening the students. And I look at these students who, how can you concentrate on calculus when you're looking out the window thinking someone's going to shoot you? And they have an amazing grit about them, that have resilience and dreams, that they're just not going to let somebody take away from them. And they're so grateful. You help them, you spend a little extra time helping them write a story or taking them to meet some newspaper reporters, on a field trip. They are just the most gracious, grateful people. And I think that they've just learned to focus on the blessings in their life and not the things that they don't have. And at the same time, I live in a pretty middle-class neighborhood, but I think I'm not trying to be, but I think a lot of kids that have enough comfort or more than enough comfort start taking that for granted. And they're always looking for what's next, what's more, what can I get that's better? And they don't sometimes stop to understand how grateful they should be for what they have.
I've heard stories of children showing great gratitude. I know a young boy who, with the help of his mother, sends thank you cards to family and friends who send him birthday cards and money for certain occasions. How soon could kids or should kids get involved in the thank you habit, and what kinds of things can they do?
Well, I think as a parent or as the adult figures in children's lives, teachers, I think it can start as soon as they learn to talk, or they're watching you like a hawk, and I have a 4-year-old granddaughter and a 1-year-old grandson, and, whenever, you watch them, whenever, you give them a cookie or something, and they're learning to say thank you, not the 1-year-old quite as much, but the 4-year-old, that's part of her habit right now. And, and she's taught by her parents to, if somebody gives her a gift, to go up and give them a hug and say thank you. So I think you're modeling this behavior from a start, or you stop at the dinner table every night, whether it's you pray or you just say, these are the things we're grateful for, or before they go to bed, or you can read stories about, with a gratitude theme in it, about people who appreciate what their life is. So I think it starts very young. It's a habit that I think people need, or, a life practice that they need to learn, just like you learn how to talk.
What are some of the things you're grateful for?
I'm extremely grateful. I have 3 children that are now young adults, and it's been a challenging journey to get them through college and to get them on their way, but they all work. They have great careers. My son became a paramedic, through helping my father through his illness. So that was a blessing out of something like that. I'm very grateful that I've always loved telling stories and reading and having people share stories with me. And so I have a career that I get to do that. And I also have a career that I'm now using that ability to write to be able to help nonprofits and schools like the school I work with, to help them raise money or to share their story and to grow awareness of that. So I'm very grateful. I have good health. I lead a meaningful, abundant life. I'm not filthy rich. I'm not rich. And some days it's very challenging. So, but a friend of mine, and she's in the book, she's a single mom too, and she says, every day that my heater still works in Chicago, I say thank you. And I do too. And I look at it like, you know what? That $4,000 that I'm going to need to, pay when this thing goes off and it's still working. So,
my.
you know, yeah. So I'm grateful for the little things and for the big things in my life.
Do you have a favorite gratitude practice of your own?
I try, and I try. So I try to, when I wake up in the morning, on my iPhone, I get a quote that comes from, it's from actually the gratefulness.org site. They have a word of the day. And so they send a quote every day about gratitude or about finding meaning in your life, you know, looking at life, you know, in a positive way. And so that's the first thing I do is I read that quote, and then I try to think of things that I'm going to be grateful for in that day ahead. And I have a journal next to my bed, and I write down, you know, what I'm very grateful for as I wake, and kind of keep that as my mantra or my intention that day. On great days when I don't have to leave right away and go to work somewhere, and I have an extra hour and it's still light in Chicago past 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm a big walker and runner, and so I kind of take that and turn the rest of the world off, with my phone off, everything, and just focus on saying I'm grateful for my blessings. So.
All right, I promised myself I wouldn't say it's 73 degrees in Southern California today, so I won't say that. And I won't
thank you. Yeah, yeah. That's. I mean, I don't know if I could say I'm great. I love Chicago, but I don't know if I'm grateful looking out at the gray right now. I'm grateful that it hasn't snowed as much as it did last.
That's a good thing. Yes, keep it in that direction. Yeah, one of the gratitude practices you suggest, and you have them all throughout the book at the end of the chapters, is to take a yoga class. And since staying in the moment is a good way to realize what we have and be grateful for it, I would think meditation would also help in bringing about gratitude.
Oh yes, I think one of the maybe barriers that people have for gratitude is this busyness. You know, like I don't have time. You know, you're just on a treadmill, or sometimes people are. You know, and they're just trying to get by. I mean, it's a tough time. You know, people are having a tough time with the economy, and they're trying to work, you're trying to take care of your kids, you know, and so we rarely get the chance to stop. And I think that part of the practice of gratitude is an awareness. And so you need to be able to find those times to be aware. One of the people we write about in the book, she creates these bracelets. They're called blessing bracelets, and they have like 5, you know, pearls. They're not real pearls, but 5 like gems on them. And a friend of mine had given it to me while my mother was really sick and in the hospital. And so when you're in the middle of, you know, you might be in a corporate meeting, or you might be in the middle of sitting at somebody's hospital bedside, or in the busyness of life, you can, it's kind of a habit. You can just like kind of touch the pearl, and each one of the 5 things you're supposed to think of 5 things that you're grateful for. So, you know, you might be in the middle of a boring meeting, but you can still stop for a second just by that act of, you know, touching the pearl. You know, and hopefully your boss doesn't, that you're thinking of something else at that moment.
You have lots of credits of your own, of course, and I mentioned some of them at the top of the program. You've worked with Nina Lesowitz to produce this book. What does Nina bring to your partnership that makes projects like this click?
I think I met Nina when I wrote my first book, which was Gifts with Heart, and that was just a collection of kind of random acts of kindness things that I had one happen to me, and then I wrote to the publisher, and I got my first book. So she was the publicist for the book, and she's got a great. So we didn't know each other. I mean, she was in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I live in Chicago. And so we have a different perspective completely, but we also had things in common. She was a single mom. She's remarried, but we had some life things that were in common, and yet we were very different. And so I think it balances it out. And we've written 3 books together, and we've become great friends, even though we're at a distance and we see each other maybe once a year. But she brings a different perspective than I bring, and I think that makes it more, you know, for the reader, there's different kinds of people in the book than just, very best friends that live within a 5-mile radius. So, I think that's a great gift in this book.
The wide range of experiences you write about includes some that are heartbreaking, actually, and they show us that gratitude empowers the individual with the strength to face those challenges. How do you manage to find gratitude in your worldwide view when the news of every day just seems to get worse and worse?
It's really challenging. I mean, I know, I wake up, I'm a writer, so my laptop is attached to my hip. And so it's really upsetting, when you open up and you turn on your email and the first thing you see is the ISIS threats, and it's so heartbreaking. And, I was a newspaper reporter, and I used to go to stories that were just devastating, a family who lost their son under horrific conditions, and I'd have to be with families. And so it's very, that can be very overwhelming. But one thing I learned early on in journalism and in what I do for a career is that there's always something hopeful in every story. Like, no matter what the situation is, people go through extreme hardship. They may have lost, a young child, and then they start a foundation, or there's always something, there's some nugget of hope in everything that happens, even though sometimes it's impossible to see. And so I'd like to think that I've tried to find that in writing, and so I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's because it's tough, that things are so quote unquote bad in the world at large. I mean, your world doesn't necessarily have to be a bad place, and obviously you're filtering that differently than the media in general.
Right.
Yeah. We're practicing gratitude, and we're realizing our heart's desires. And I wanted to ask you, how do you know when something you're getting, some want or wish, is actually a heart's desire, or is it the call of the ego? That can be a tough call sometimes. For me, it's a visceral thing. I have a feeling in my gut when it's something that's really good for me, and I know when it's not. How does that work for you?
I'm pretty similar. I mean, I think I know. I've been through enough experiences. I think when I was younger, it was more ego-driven. The excitement of, being a young reporter and having your story on the front page. And that lasted all of about 5 minutes, because the next day somebody else had their story on the front page. I tell my kids when they're looking for jobs, I said, when I started journalism, I could wallpaper my house with rejections. So there's the things that you get that you worked really hard for are accomplishments. But I think you learn to pay. I think that's one of the things with gratitude, and having, when you're gratitude for what the essence of it, you're grateful for what the essence of your life is, and the things that are really important, like the people and the relationships, and not the outer things. That if it's an outer thing, it might not necessarily be that authentic as it is if it's something that's really a gift, something that happens to a family member, or even if it appears to be a loss on the outside, there's sometimes a gift, or usually a gift that comes in some manner. So I pay attention, like you do, to my gut. I've learned many times how I used to ignore that and then go, why did I do that? So I'm much more aware of that now.
You ignore that at your peril. No, I'm going to finish up by asking you if you have one particular point that you'd like the reader to take away from the book.
I hope what I think is good about the book is that there's short stories, and you can find yourself in any one of them. So I hope that a reader will find that this is me in one of the stories, the ability to think they're not out there alone. I think that the book brings to in many different situations, people are out there and they're suffering in silence, or they're, not able to see their gifts. And I think each one of these stories has a unique perspective. And so I hope that a reader will find a little bit of themselves and a little hope in one of the stories.
Want to give us your website?
We have a blog. It's called thegrateful.lifebook.com.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then we have a Facebook
Right.
and a Twitter account.
Okay. And any other projects coming down the road, maybe individually or with Nina, that you want to talk about?
Well, we're working on kind of what our next book could be, and so we haven't done a proposal or anything yet, but we're working on it. We were looking at doing something with people looking for their ancestors, because that's become so popular, and connecting, knowing yourself by knowing where you came from.
Sure.
But we haven't explored that in depth yet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, another great avenue for gratitude right there.
Right,
Yeah.
Exactly.
The book is Living Life as, I keep saying living life. I have that copy of that book right in front of me. The book is The Grateful Life, The Secret to Happiness and the Science of Contentment. Our guest today, Mary Beth Sammons. And Mary Beth, thanks for taking time to be here and for your work in helping us with generosity and connection and in healing too. I appreciate that, and I hope you come back and talk to us again.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having us, and I hope even though it's just me, we both really appreciate the opportunity to share kind of the good news about this book. So thank you.
All right, have a great day. We'll talk to you again.
Okay, you too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And we will have a link to Mary Beth's website at achieve4yourself.com. If you're not there now, go and register for blog posts from Genulines. Leave your email address in the box provided, and news and reminders about the program and guests will get directly to you. You can hear this show and past episodes on Achieve for Yourself. And at the YouTube page, go to youtube.com/GeoHost. You'll find them there. And when you do, please subscribe and make sure you get to hear every edition of the program. There's some good ones coming up too. We'll be telling you about that in the future. You can hear about them through the blog posts. And speaking of blogs, the show is available on Blog Talk Radio as always. Generally, the show is posted on Blog Talk Radio the day after the calls go out. So once the show is edited, put together, you'll find it on Blog Talk Radio. It tends to be a Friday, because we usually do the calls on a Thursday, although that is always subject to change. So stay close, and if there are any changes, we'll let you know. All right, that is going to do it for today. I want to thank you very much for being with us. Be well, and I will talk to you soon.